less than 1% of the vote. Less than 1%. He dropped out. 20 years earlier, in the race for the 1988 Democratic presidential nomination, Biden was caught up in a plagiarism scandal. He dropped out.
I do it with incredible reluctance, and it makes me angry. I'm angry with myself for having been put myself in the position of having to make this choice.
And here we are, yet again, with Biden in the race for 2020. Third time lucky, I guess. Don't forget also his career as a United States Senator from the tiny state of Delaware. In 36 years running for office every 6 years in Delaware, he faced just one competitive race. That's it, one. Right at the beginning, back in 1972. So I ask again, where is this evidence that he's some major vote winner? That he reaches parts of the electorate that other Democratic candidates don't? I mean, I guess he was part of the winning Democratic presidential ticket in 2008 and 2012, but is anyone seriously going to argue that Barack Obama would not have won those races had Joe Biden not been on the ticket? Seriously? In fact, and I know we have such short memories in the media, but we've known for a while that Obama's top aides considered replacing Biden on the ticket in 2012 with Hillary Clinton because they thought Clinton would give them a boost in the polls. Oh, the irony. And I'm also reminded of the fact that just as Biden is seen as a candidate of the white working class in this 2020 Democratic race, so was Hillary Clinton in the 2008 Democratic race, and we know how that turned out in the end. Look, I suspect Biden's lead is going to start coming down. It's still a long time till the Iowa caucuses, which are more than 8 months away. The first televised debates are next month, and I think you'll see the gaffe-prone, policy-free former vice president struggle and take some hits on stage from the likes of Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and even Kamala Harris.
Well, I have a great deal of respect for Vice President Joe Biden, but I disagree with him. That 1994 crime bill, it did contribute to mass incarceration in our country.
People say electable. But this is the era of Donald J. Trump. Does anyone even know what electable means anymore? What counts as electable? Never forget, in 2016, 17 Republicans ran for their party's presidential nomination, and the guy from Home Alone 2 won. So anyone who tells you at this stage that Biden has got this in the bag is either a liar or a fool. Let's see if my guest today agrees with me. She's one of my favorite writers right now. She's writer-at-large for New York Magazine and The Cut, and a contributing editor at Elle Magazine. She's the author of, among other books, Good and Mad, The Revolutionary Power of Women's Anger. And she's also written an essay, which I urge you all to read after you finish listening to this show, headlined, Joe Biden Isn't the Answer. Rebecca Traister joins me now. Rebecca, thanks for being here on Deconstructed.
Thank you so much for having me.
In your New York Magazine essay from March, which I loved, on Biden, you say he's the champion, the protector of, quote, that guy in the diner. You say he himself is that guy. Who is that guy?
That guy is this sort of prototypical imagined voter and often, in fact, a politician that a Democratic Party, in my view, turned to very soon after the transformative and disruptive social movements of the mid to late 20th century. So the women's movement, the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, after which there was a kind of partisan realignment in which a Democratic Party suddenly found itself in the 1970s and moving into what was going to become the Reagan Revolution as the party that was defending civil rights, women's rights, these newly won liberties for people who historically had been very marginalized. And the party itself, which was still run by white men, imagined the American voter to be the white man. You know,
in a diner.
In the diner now, I think. I don't know if the diners were as hot in the 1970s as they are now, but Biden is he's that guy. He's the guy who is so familiar. He is the middle of the road. I take the train, Amtrak, Delaware, folksy, aw shucks, not perfect, not polished, not Ivy League, not a woman, not a person of color, not gay, right? Like he's all the things that revert back to who historically had always had the grip on power, and the reassurance that that kind of person might still have the grip on power. And it's not just, I'm not talking about just the fact that he's a white guy. I want to be really clear about that, right? He was a white guy who ran in the early 70s for his Senate seat on a civil rights platform and then made a turn on busing and desegregation efforts, right?
Anti-busing.
Anti-busing, right. Became anti-busing. He had run on a busing platform, but then when he was when we had these transformative moments, I think with movements, we often we often talk about them because they are now decades in the past. I think we forget how disruptive they were to the fabric of daily life and to politics. But there was pushback to them, right? That pushback in part fuels Reagan and the rise of the right in the 1980s. And so when Joe Biden gets into office, he faces pushback from many of his white constituents in Delaware, and he turns on busing. And actually, in his public turn on busing, he gives cover to other white Democrats who then also turn on busing, and ultimately the busing legislation is defeated. So that's one example. He is also, from the beginning, anti-abortion. He gets sworn into office weeks before Roe v. Wade is decided in 1973. And in 1976, the Hyde Amendment, a legislative rider that prohibits the use of federal insurance programs to pay for abortions, thereby making abortion inaccessible to low-income women. Joe Biden votes for it, even in its earliest incarnations, which didn't have exceptions for life and health of the mother and rape and incest. That's where he is on abortion in the beginning.
So you talk about disruptive periods. We are in a pretty disruptive period right now, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
You say in your piece that Biden is seen as, quote, the best and safest candidate to get us out of this perilous and scary political period. And then you add, but the irony is that so much of what is terrifying and dangerous about this time are in fact problems that can be laid at the feet of Joe Biden himself and the guys we've regularly been assured are Democrats' only answer. Some might say that's a bit unfair. Are you saying Biden is to blame?
I'm not saying it's Joe Biden's fault. What I'm saying is the failure of the party, that he's been senior within in one capacity or another, as a senator and then as a vice president, has not aggressively defended the very freedoms that were won in that disruptive period, right? So if you look at everything from the Voting Rights Act, Roe, there are a whole set of actual changes that happened that are precisely what made everybody so uncomfortable, right? New kinds of freedoms, protections, opportunities for kinds of people who'd been denied them in the past. So the Democratic Party, to my mind, has not vociferously and energetically defended those wins. They've been in retreat from them. They've behaved defensively. Joe Biden is emblematic of that. Is it Joe Biden's fault? No. But the fact, for example, that he did vote for Hyde and supported it for a long time, and as recently as 2007, by the way, was still saying that he'd gotten better on abortion, but still sort of saw it in this paternalistic way. He just wants to help young women not have to make hard decisions or whatever. He's also the guy who oversaw the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings. He is the man